Somebody had asked me after I made a series of videos belittling gold and talking about the gold scam, which is a fact, your cognitive dissonance notwithstanding. But somebody had asked me, well, if not gold, then how do I preserve my wealth? Now, look, maybe that specific person asking me, and there probably are a few other people like that person, but maybe they truly were a hardworking person who produced things, got some money for that, saved up some money, and bought some gold, hoping to secure his or her future, right? Okay, fair enough. That also does happen, but I would venture a guess that the overwhelming majority of these people worried about preserving their wealth, not knowing what to do, are parasites. Lower level parasites, because the top level parasites are the chosen ones, the chosenites, who are in on the scheme and they're not worried about preserving their wealth because they write the rules of the game that they make everybody else play, right? Because free market, which is another hilarious thing about these free marketeers, right? I'll get back on topic in just a second, but tangents are my favorite thing, right? All these free market capitalists, free marketeers say, we need to have a free market and all of you need to use gold. Very curious concept of freedom, I would say. Don't you think? Very, very interesting idea of freedom. But hey, it's just like with money, right? Everybody has their own definition of what that means. And when it comes to money, that actually makes sense. And if you think about it, it's a very potent statement on what money actually is, right? Because everybody has a different idea of what it could be. That in and of itself should tell you something. When it comes to freedom, that's kind of a universal truth, right? Either you got it or you don't. Or you got it or you don't. But back on topic, lower level parasites, right? These people who spent their life stealing, unknowingly perhaps, or not understanding that the type of job that they do that doesn't produce anything, they were, marketers, or people who made money out of money, basically, without producing any goods for anybody, without really supporting any sort of economy except for the financial pyramid scheme economy, right? People who were basically facilitators for stuff that the people they helped out could have done themselves, basically, right? Just provided useful, quote unquote, services or didn't produce anything. They just mooched off this sort of thieving system that has been designed to be so, right? Well, why are they worried? Because the system which has allowed them to steal is about to collapse, or so we think. So they're no longer going to be able to steal. And because they can't produce anything, right? They're worried. People who know how to fix cars, people who know how to build homes, people who know how to build anything, people who know how to grow food, people who know how to do things. Well, you don't really need their money, right? You don't need their economy because you got your own economy, right? Simple. So it's really, for the most part, I don't mean to offend anybody, but look, if you're not what they call you, you are what you answer to, right? So if I ain't talking about you, fuck you get mad for? Anyway, it's the lower level parasites who can't produce anything, who can't work with their hands, and they can't. They're not viable members of any economy except the financial one, which is about to collapse, right? People are always going to need to eat. People are always going to need houses to live. People are always going to need clothes. They're going to need their cars fixed or whatever, right? So if you know how to do any of that, then you shouldn't really be worried about it. You'll be okay. Stock up some food for, as we say in the old country, the black hour, and you'll be all right. Preserving your ill-gotten gains? The fuck you asking me for how to do that when I'm telling you that you've been stealing all your goddamn life? Pay attention. No offense. I'm sure the person who asked the question worked very, very hard their whole life producing stuff, and maybe perhaps now they're at an age where they're like, oh, now I get to chill, right? So how do I do that? Perhaps, but chill. Chill. What's that all about, right? unless unless you made enough kids and raised them properly, and you probably ain't chilling. And if you destroyed your body to a point where you can no longer work at the age of 70, I don't see why people shouldn't be able to. Well, then, the Grim Reaper will show up and collect his harvest. Maybe it's about time, right? Or do you think we should burn the kids' future in order to keep you warm at night? Shout out to Hot for Health. I will never forget that. Anyway, someone suggested a book to me. David Graeber, Debt, the First 5,000 Years. Any one of his talks on the topic or his book, or the first couple of chapters, will blow out of water all these myths you've been told about money economy, a whole bunch of nonsense. Anyway, what are we talking about next? I went down to my neighbor who had a donkey that she no longer needed, and because she knows I like to consume donkey meat, she hit me up. I said, all right, cool. I don't have any money, which, wasn't exactly true, but I told her, look, I'll give you a couple of goats when I have them. And because I know she likes to sell goat meat, she has a restaurant, right? And she said, cool, just take the donkey then. And then when the goats were ready, a couple months later, I gave them to her, right? So, and I thought that was barter, right? I thought we were bartering. No. We were trading using credit, right? Imaginary money. And even though I was participating in this, calling it barter erroneously, that wasn't the case. I wasn't I wasn't really understanding what it is that I was doing exactly, right? Even though I was doing it spontaneously and naturally and it made sense to me, I really didn't conceive of it, let me put it to you this the way David Graeber describes it in his talks or in his book, right? That's not barter, technically. When all these scheming, and these are not the words he uses, this is my video, right? All these scheming parasites that use these words such as barter, what they really mean is a spot trade, right? Had I had two goats right then and there when she wanted to get rid of that donkey, and the exchange was made right then and there, and we went on our merry way, that would have been barter, okay? What I'm doing is trading using credit, money, right? Imaginary money, credit. Why do you need money? If you produce shit, why do you need money? And why do you need the state to give you money, right? Why? When you could just give each other credit, why not? Right? 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 You could have a time bank. You could have a credit center in town, or some honest person, hopefully, doing the accounting for the whole village or the whole town or city or country, right? Hopefully a transparent, maybe accessible online to everybody, where all the transactions go on live. Someone just keeping credit, right? And maybe you feed that person or something. They just keep track of all the transactions with imaginary money. Isn't that what banks do? Except they own the money, meaning they own you, and they get a piece of every transaction, right? Which you could decide what piece of every transaction you'd want to give to that person keeping track. But it could be, this could be done locally. Why not? The only people who say it can't is the people who are lower level parasites. The high level parasites know and understand that this could be done that way, which is why they don't want it, right? Because they need to skim off the top, take the cream, give you, skimmed milk, basically, so they can get fat off the cheese and cream. All you get is the sour, right? So this idea that these so-called free market capitalists, right, especially the gold buggy ones, you guys are all bugged out. This idea that, you know, them saying we need to have a free market, right? We need to have a free market now, and you all need to use gold in this free market, right? Curious idea of freedom they got, no? Don't you think? But what they don't know, because they don't care to learn the truth, because they're ideologically possessed, okay? They reverse engineer reality instead of studying reality, investigating and looking at the world and how it works and what it is actually. They just bought this idea and with it a whole bunch of shiny yellow metal, so now they have to prop up the fucking idea, basically. Right? We need to have a free market, and all of you need to use the money that I tell you to use. Free market, goddammit. You don't make any sense, guys. Just listen to yourself. Take a look in the damn mirror. You don't make any sense. Anyway, so as I suspected, and David Graeber in his book illustrates this better than I ever could. But what I suspected was that, because this is plainly obvious, you know, whenever we've had gold money in history, it was always stamped with what? Well, the effigy of who? The commander-in-chief, right? The guy in charge of all the military. Why would they put the military leader on the money, right? Why? Well, because it was enforced at the point of a gun, always. I mean, just look at how the IMF works. Just look at the world for what it is. Stop lying to yourself and realize that, well, money and guns go hand in hand, don't they? Always have. So basically what David... Oh, and this is another funny thing about these so-called free market capitalists trying to determine what kind of money we use, right? At the same time saying that the government needs to stay out of the market. Who's going to enforce your money, dummy? Who's going to back the money? Who's going to guarantee the money? Who? The money that you think everyone should use universally. Who's going to guarantee that money? Well, the government holding all the guns. That's how it's always been done, right? So basically, and David Graeber talks about this, we'll take Roman Empire because that's the beast basically we're dealing with here. They passed the law basically. First of all, they would conquer a whole bunch of people, as we already know, right? And they made them pay tax. The Romans didn't pay tax, which should tell you who you are if you are made to pay tax, right? You've been conquered. So they made all the conquered people pay tax, and what they said was, well, you got to pay tax in these little gold coins that we're going to make, right? So they made all these tokens for all the kids at the... This is how they treat you. For all the kids at the arcade, they made all these shiny tokens. Let me take a sip of my coffee. You should too, David. And they gave all those tokens to the soldiers, right? Because the government didn't have the resources, or figured it would be easier. They didn't have the resources when you really think about it. They created the resource, right? The money. But they didn't want to bother with feeding, housing, and providing all this stuff, weapons and so on and so forth for the soldiers. So what they did, and which was very ingenious, you have to admit, give the devil his due. They passed a decree where you had to pay taxes, and you had to pay taxes in this specific coin, right? That's how they backed the money. And they paid these soldiers in this coin, right? So the people that made weapons, right? The smiths, people that grew the food, the farmers, people that make clothes, people that, had hotels or whatever, built houses. They had to go to the soldier and be like, what do you need? Because you got the gold I need to pay my taxes so they don't chop my head off. So what do you need? You need some clothes, food, shelter. I'll provide it for you, right? Economy. That's how trade was always on a mass scale across, great distances, was always enforced by the government. economy is, an economy that isn't very local and autonomous, was always enforced by the government. There was no transnational economies. There was no broad scale economy before government, before armies, before gold, before all these systems enforced at the point of a gun. So any free market capitalist who says, we need to have a free market and you have to use this government backed at the force of a gun money is just a fucking idiot. And that's real. You're just a fucking idiot. Examine the things that you're saying. We need to have a free market and you must use this as method of payment, which has to logically be enforced at the point of a gun by a central authority that demands this money to not kill you. That's how this money is backed, with your life, your freedom. That's how they keep faith in the tax system, because you don't pay your taxes. Well, what's the other thing that's guaranteed? Death. And it's coming. Unless you pay your taxes, then you abate death, if only for the time being. So, where do we take this next? I highly recommend the book by David Graeber. Thank you to the person who alerted me to the existence of this very, very good book. Barter is a lie. It's a fairy tale. Barter never existed the way people... Well, it did exist in certain communities, usually hostile, right? This is anthropological evidence. This isn't some fairy tale that Adam Smith with his hidden hand, which all that means, guys, is that same hand that all those so-called Freemasons put under their lapel when they pose for photos. That's the hidden hand, dummies. Just because, whatever, man. You could think whatever the hell you want to think, but, try to make sense, at least when you come over here. And just because I said leave the people alone, okay, when talking about murder of innocent people, enslaving innocent people, just because I said leave people alone, that doesn't mean that I'm a libertarian, right? Welcome to the channel, right? Acting like you've never seen any of my previous videos, right? Preaching to me about dualism. Okay. So why are you all about either or yourself? If dualism is for simple folk. Fuck out of here, man. Like, take a look in the goddamn mirror, clown. What are we talking about? So, barter, insofar as we can tell, looking at all the anthropological evidence, only really existed between tribes that were somewhat hostile to one another and decided to put down the knife and forget the hostilities and become somewhat hospitable, if only for the time being, if only for the convenience of that barter brought about, right? So these tribes that would normally be hostile to one another would run into one another, and then they would go on their merry way, likely to never run into one another. It made sense for them to barter because they were getting rid of shit that they didn't want, hoping to get stuff that was useful to them. Perhaps they were pushing some kind of, dull axe, as he says in the book. Not exactly, but, or something that just isn't all that good, and they wanted to get rid of it. And they didn't want the person coming back, looking for any kind of warranty or guarantee, right? So you trade, you trick somebody, basically. That's what barter is about, has been mostly. You give something to somebody you don't want, right? Why are all the gold bugs selling all the gold, right? Because they want it. Because it's like, you guys aren't making any sense, and you're still not answering the tough questions. So basically, you got rid of something you didn't want, you didn't find it useful, and because you perhaps thought that that person you gave it to, you'd have to con them, basically, whether that actually happened or not. Maybe they found use for that thing that you no longer found use for, but because to you it wasn't useful anymore, which is why you wanted to get rid of it. You didn't want to do that to your neighbor. You didn't want to screw over your neighbor as you saw it, right? So barter only really existed between people who happened to run into one another, and perhaps only once or not that frequently, right? It was kind of a hostile thing between kind of hostile people who would put down the hostilities of only for the time being to get rid of shit they didn't want. So barter did happen, but really on a small scale. In villages, between neighbors, you didn't have barter or spot trade. Yeah, people traded things, but they traded things on credit, right? Credit, as David Graeber puts it, predates physical money because it makes perfect sense, right? I didn't even really have to conceive of what it is that I was doing in these terms when I was dealing with my neighbor and somebody else, like someone else right now. I owe them $100. It's the measuring stick that we use without using the money itself, right? It's a measuring stick. It's a point of reference because they gave me something that was worth that much. And now I'm going to give them something that's worth exactly that much, right? It's agreed upon. So it's not barter. We're not actually using physical dollars or even virtual dollars. We're just using dollars as a measuring stick. And we got our own credit system, right? I don't have to give them this specific thing right then and there, which would be spot trade barter. I owe them, and because they're my neighbor and we have trust, and you don't screw over your neighbors because it's just the bad policy basically that'll come to bite you in the ass. You create your own money, virtual money, credit, right? Ta-da! How difficult is that? Well, if you don't produce anything, yeah, it's very difficult. Once the system of accountability is very much localized, where everyone knows everybody and everyone can see your work gets valued for what it is, right? Because you're not stealing by means of a computer or the stock market or some other fucking nonsense that nobody needs from this person that you're never going to see, right? You're not stealing from them. You're literally dealing with your neighbors. And there's perfect accountability there. Maybe not perfect, but it's easy to account for. And it's easy to flush out all the fucking parasites that don't produce anything, right? Well, what do you got to offer? What do you got to offer? Some shiny round objects? Shove that up your ass. What do I do with that? There's nothing I can do with that, right? Gold could never be money without being enforced by military force. It could never be money because people can't use it. Most people can't use it. It could be, it was a commodity that's traded, jewelry makers, people who like to make fancy, pretty things, artisans. Yeah, they use that. Why not? And that's how it was used organically, naturally, until you enforced it at the point of a gun, making people use gold, right? Because free market. Like to have a gold standard is the complete and utter antithesis of a free market. But all these so-called free market capitalists are like, we gotta use gold because free market. It's like, just examine the basic presuppositions of your worldview. And it's just going to crumble down like the piece of shit that it is. How do we wrap this piece of shit video up? I don't know. Look, the simple fact that we can't agree on what money is, and neither do economists, right? Who have reverse engineered reality in order to sell you a bill of goods you still don't seem to be able to understand. Gold money, day money, tax system, right? They had to invent this like, oh, what did we do before we had money? Everyone had to trade, and how did people ever survive? How did people not starve? Oh my God, how did these dumb cave dwellers ever figure out how to deal with one another? Oh my God. We had credit. We gave each other credit. Give us some credit. Right? Give yourself some credit. Anyway, where was I? Rambling. The simple fact that we can't even agree on what money is, right? What does that tell you? Well, money can be anything you want it to be. If you're saying gold is money, well, I mean, that one you kind of have to enforce. You have to brainwash people to believe it is. And then it can be. Then it becomes money. But why should it be the only money, right? Money is whatever you want it to be. Just ask somebody what money is, and no one really knows, because anything can be money. Money is originally credit. Money, original money, never really existed in a physical form. They first had to make it physical to brainwash you into this idea of virtual money. But virtual money is neutral. It's not evil in any way, shape, or form. The evil comes with, well, who gets to dictate what money is? That's the evil, right? So anyone telling you, well, this is money, gold is money, that is money, and that's final, is nothing but a dictator. You may not know this, but you're pushing for evil. You're pushing for the destruction of freedom and calling it free. Like, you're literally retarded. Literally retarded. So, the simple fact that we can't agree on what money is, that even economists, people who made up this fake economy, basically, it's not fake because it exists, but they created it. It's not an organic creation, this economy that we have today. Like, what sense does it fucking make to ship all your corn or soybeans to China when you have the weather, the water, and the land to produce it yourself? Like, what sense does that make? Yeah, but that's today's economy. It alienates, not to sound Marxist or anything, but, you know, to any lie, for people to buy any lie, it has to have some truth to it. But Marx's idea of alienation, even though I'm probably butchering the concept and, you know, reinterpreting it, was very correct in many ways. We're literally alienated from the means of production. And most of us don't produce anything. So, the very fact that we can't agree on what money is tells you that, what? Money is whatever you want it to be. It can be whatever you want it to be. It's up to you to decide what money is. And as soon as you give the money-making power to a central governing authority, which is what all the gold bugs want to do, while screaming freedom. I mean, I'm sorry I keep repeating myself, but how fucking idiotic is that, right? As soon as you give that power to a central authority, you can forget about freedom. They're going to tax every single transaction, which is what they've been doing. And they're going to live off the hard labor of hardworking people. They're parasites. And the people who, you know, get in on that game, on that scheme, even though it's crumbs that they get, but everyone who gets in on that scheme without producing anything is a fucking parasite too. So people talking to me about preserving their wealth, most of them are low-level parasites who can only be parasites so long as the system allows them to. As soon as the system breaks down and changes, right? The people that change the rules of the game, they're going to prepare themselves and position themselves to be able to win because they write the rules of the game, which you don't know what they are, what they're going to be exactly, so you have to gamble, right? But instead of establishing your own economy, you're still depending on these parasites. You're just a lower-level parasite. And for all of you who seem to understand that digital currency, completely and utterly virtual, centralized currency is coming, right? Which will take control of every single transaction on this planet, insofar as you could brainwash everyone to think that that is money, right? And that's the only kind of money. You see how you've contributed to the problem, gold bugs? Funneling people, feeding the beast, funneling them into this ideology, brainwashing them with it, even though the final product, the coin that you choose to use is slightly different, you're still pushing the same idea, right? Centrally controlled currency. And for all of you gold bugs who seem to understand that digital currency is coming where every transaction is controlled and they're going to eliminate cash, for all of you who think you're going to be able to use your gold in that kind of a system as money, I mean, you're really a special kind of retard. You gotta be. Ultimately, what are you going to do with all this gold when let's say the system crashes? Now look, if you're able to get out at the right minute, just as with any Ponzi scheme or pump and dump, then yeah, you probably make some money. Good money too, if you're able to time your exit well and leave all these other suckers holding their ass, basically. right? Because you're a goddamn parasite. As long as you could get out at the right time, yeah, you'll probably make some money. But if you don't, what do you do with your gold, right? You're going to have to exchange it for what? The current currency. So how is gold money if you can't use it except to exchange it for? I mean, how is gold valued in the first place, right? It's not a value in and of itself. It's valued by dollars. It's something else. That's its only value, right? Because once again, an egg has calories, protein, fat, and all this other stuff that we need, and it's also valued in dollars. What value does gold have? Just dollar value. That's all. That's how fragile that shit is. So yeah, if you time your exit properly, you know, you'll be a very successful vampire. Congratulations. But if you think you're going to be able to exchange your gold for digital currency without, kicking yourself in the ass for holding it, both ass and the gold, you live in some kind of special lotto land, right? The goal of the elites, the goal of the central power is to control every single goddamn transaction, right? They're saying no cash, just virtual currency. Not even credit cards anymore, just virtual currency, okay? No ATMs, none of that shit. Virtual currency, money literally pulled out of their ass, straight out of the air. You think you're going to be able to use gold as money in that sort of environment? I mean, wow. Congratulations. So, yeah, but these are the kind of people who say, we're pro free market so long as we get to tell you what you can and cannot do in this free market, right? What currency you get to use in this free market. We got to get rid of cash or the current monetary system, except gold has always been valued in dollars, right? In cash. They're inseparable. At least insofar as we can remember, gold and dollars have always gone hand in hand. But you think that one can collapse and not the other. Fuck, man. But all of this nonsense that you've been able to digest and spit back out thinking that it's your own fucking idea when you've just been brainwashed, all this nonsense is only possible with this by means of this ideological reverse engineered reality. Making up fairy tales, as David Graeber once again aptly points out in his book, making up fairy tales about barter. And what did we ever do before we had gold? What did we ever do before the king gave us coin? What were we? Oh my God. How did we ever? They make it seem like it was caves. We went straight from caves to palaces because gold, right? Even though most of us live in fucking, I don't care how pretty they are, disposable piece of shit homes, right? Yeah, we went straight from caves to palaces because gold and free market. Congratulations. You guys are doing a good job. Fucking up. All right? That's my video. Long ass rant, but what do I care? Right? Do you? Thanks for listening. And do check out David Graeber. Excellent, excellent, excellent book. Well, at least the first 3 chapters. So far, so good. We'll see what else this descendant of a Polish Jew has to say. All right? Take care.